Stars shimmered like scattered embers over the dead world of Vega 9. What had once been a cradle of stubborn human settlers was now a gray husk turning slowly beneath the pale light of its sun. Admiral Turok Ven stood at the observation deck of his flagship, the Vorith Ascendant, and watched the planet's surface burn. His mandibles clicked with quiet amusement. He had long since stopped finding beauty in conquest, yet the soft orange glow still held a certain elegance, order imposed on chaos. Human resistance eliminated, Admiral, murmured his second-in-command, a nervous officer whose armor still gleamed from recent promotion. Turok tilted his head. Eliminated? There is no elimination of vermin. They scatter, hide, breed again. Humanity has taught us that much. He turned from the viewport, the reflection of fire tracing along his scaled face. Still, Vega 9 was an inconvenience. I'm grateful to be rid of its noise. The bridge crew chuckled, the sound metallic through their translators. They were tired of this war, the sort of fatigue that breeds cruelty. For decades, the Zytherian Dominion had carved through human space, finding little sport in it. These creatures, these Terrans, fought with primitive ships and emotional speeches. Their desperation was more irritating than dangerous. A communication tone chimed, sharp as breaking glass. Turok gestured lazily, and the hollow emitter blossomed to life. A senior strategist appeared, her crest lined with gold. High Command sends new orders. The Council grows impatient. You are to advance toward the Sol system. Strike Earth itself. Murmurs rippled through the crew. Turok's eyes brightened slightly, though not with fear. Earth, he repeated, the birthplace of all this noise. A symbolic victory, if nothing else. They expect it to fall within a cycle, the strategist continued. Intelligence reports minimal orbital defense. Their fleets are scattered, their morale broken. Turok waved her image away before she could finish. It will be done. He faced the crew. Prepare the fleet for jump. We will end this mythology of humanity once and for all. As the command echoed through the ship, Turok lingered at the viewport. He remembered the first human prisoner he had ever questioned, a woman, bruised but unbroken, who had stared at him as though he were the one being judged. She had said in halting Zytherian, "We don't stop, even when we should." He dismissed it then as bravado. Now, as Vega 9 cracked beneath its own heat, the memory crawled uninvited into his thoughts. The fleet slipped into warp, 1,000 blue flares vanishing into the void. Hours stretched into the tense silence of interstellar travel. Turok's officers busied themselves with routine chatter, jokes about Terran fragility, wagers on how quickly Earth's population would surrender. Only Turok remained silent. There was something about the assignment that felt too clean, too easy. When they emerged near the Sol boundary, the system greeted them with quiet. No fleets, no transmissions, just the lonely glimmer of planets and the faint hum of old satellites drifting in dark orbits. "Admiral," said the sensor chief, "long-range scans confirm minimal activity. One defense grid around Earth, half functional. A few outdated orbital cannons. Hardly worth our attention." Turok exhaled through his gills, a sound like a sigh. Perhaps they finally learned submission. Permission to broadcast surrender demand. He nodded. Across the system, a signal pulsed, formal, arrogant, perfectly Zytherian. "This is the Dominion fleet. You have 10 minutes to yield planetary command and disarm. Failure to comply will result in eradication." The minutes passed without response. Then a faint voice cut through the static, distinctly human, calm and measured. "Acknowledge, Dominion fleet." The bridge fell quiet. Turok leaned forward. "At last," he murmured. "A negotiator." But the voice continued, oddly unhurried. "You've reached the Sol defense grid. Congratulations on making it this far. You should know, by entering this system, you've activated a series of countermeasures that cannot be undone. Proceed at your discretion." The transmission ended. Laughter rippled through the command deck. One officer smirked. "They bluff. Always the dramatics." Turok forced a smile, but did not laugh. "Scan again," he ordered. "Admiral, there's nothing." "Wait." The technician's eyes widened. Detecting multiple faint signatures. Thousands. No, tens of thousands. Energy spikes across the asteroid belt, Luna's dark side, Mars' orbit. Before the report finished, the ship shuddered. A silent ripple crossed space, a kinetic slug traveling faster than light punched through the nearest cruiser. No beam, no warning, just a flash of molten hull and the scream of atmosphere venting into vacuum. "Shields up." Trace the trajectory. Turok shouted, but the words were drowned by the next impact. Two more ships vanished, shredded into debris. Then a third. It was too precise to be luck. Admiral, we're being fired on from multiple vectors. Source unknown. On the holo map, icons flickered, tiny automated stations emerging from debris fields, asteroids splitting open to reveal hidden turrets. Old satellites came alive, transmitting attack algorithms. The void itself seemed to turn against them. Turok's claws tightened on the command rail. Retreat formation now. But space had already become a trap. Dozens of human vessels appeared without warning, sleek, matte black ships bearing no insignia. They did not hail, did not taunt. They simply fired with chilling precision, disabling engines, cutting through holes like surgeons dissecting tissue. A junior officer's voice trembled. They knew we'd come. Turok stared at the tactical readouts. Every move he made anticipated, countered, answered with unflinching calm. No, he said softly, realization dawning like ice in his veins. They wanted us to come. From the darkness of the human fleet, a transmission blinked through, the same calm voice as before, female, almost gentle. Admiral Turok Ven, of the Dominion. You have entered restricted human territory. This operation marks the end of your campaign. Stand down or be dismantled. The bridge froze. Even the static seemed to hold its breath. Turok looked into the void where that voice had come from. There was no fury in it, no gloating, just quiet certainty. He understood in that instant that the war he thought was ending had only just begun. He straightened, mandibles drawing tight, and gave a single order. Return fire. Outside, Earth remained silent and distant, a blue spark against the black. But its silence no longer felt like weakness. It felt like the pause before an execution. And for the first time in his long career, Admiral Turok Ven wondered if the hunters had finally become the prey. The silence after battle was worse than the noise. Admiral Turok Ven stood amid the wreckage of his shattered formation, watching the holographic map blink with red failure marks. His once proud fleet had been reduced to scattered fragments, drifting between Mars and the Belt. Each blink represented hundreds of lives, and yet the humans had barely spoken since their first strike. They moved like ghosts, silent, coordinated, efficient. No demands, no gloating, no hatred. Just purpose. He struggled to understand it. The Dominion had faced resistance before, species that screamed defiance until their skies burned, but never this. Humanity's counterattack was surgical, as though they'd rehearsed it for years. Every Zytherian retreat vector was predicted, every tactic neutralized before it began. Admiral, said his sensor chief, voice trembling, the human vessels aren't pursuing. They're holding position. Turok's mandibles tightened. Holding? To gloat. No, sir. They've disabled our escape drives, but are not pressing the advantage. It's as if they're waiting. The thought disturbed him more than defeat. He turned toward the viewport where Earth hung, small but luminous. Its oceans shimmered cold blue, unbroken by battle. They think like predators, he muttered, but act like surgeons. A calm signal pierced the silence. Zytherian flagship, this is Admiral Lyra Kane of the Terran Defense Command. The voice was steady, precise, almost soothing. Turok's translator softened its tone into something unsettlingly human. You've trespassed in restricted space. We've neutralized your forward fleets and secured the orbital perimeter. Surrender your weapons and withdraw. Further aggression will result in termination. He forced composure. You presume much, Terran. We presume only what we can prove. Kane's image flickered to life, her uniform dark gray, her expression unreadable. There was no triumph in her gaze, only calculation. For years, your Dominion believed humanity weak. That belief kept you alive. You should have let it. Her calmness infuriated him. You speak of strength while hiding behind ambushes and automated weapons. She almost smiled. That's the point. We stopped fighting wars the old way. You taught us what mercy costs. Her eyes flicked toward data feeds, scrolling beside her. We didn't want this war, Admiral. But we studied you. Every tactic, every arrogance. You built empires on predictable logic. We built our defense on chaos. The transmission cut abruptly. Turok stared at the fading hologram, a hollow chill settling in his chest. For the first time, he wondered whether this defeat was not a setback, but a beginning. Hours later, he sat alone in his command chamber, reviewing intercepted human transmissions. The languages were old, some predating interstellar travel. In them he found fragments of humanity's past: wars, revolutions, self-inflicted devastation. Nuclear winters, genocides, resurrections. Their history was a chronicle of survival through catastrophe. It was barbaric. It was magnificent. He played a file labeled Archive, Human Conflict History, 20th to 22nd Century. Images unfolded: burning cities, soldiers clutching rifles under storm clouds, civilians rebuilding ruins again and again. At first he was repulsed, then fascinated, then unsettled. There was no joy in their violence, only inevitability. They didn't fight to conquer. They fought because surrender had never been an option. An officer interrupted his trance. "Admiral, we've intercepted their fleet movements. They're regrouping near Luna, not pursuing us directly." "Let them," Turok murmured. "They're not chasing victory. They're shaping it." He rose, the room's dim blue light tracing the scars along his carapace. Those scars, once marks of pride, now felt irrelevant. He had fought countless species, but never one that reflected his own empire's cruelty back with such quiet finality. Another alert blinked. His comms officer hesitated before speaking. "High Command demands a report. They're expecting word of your success." Turok almost laughed. "Then tell them the truth. Humanity doesn't lose wars. They incubate them." The officer looked uncertain. "Admiral, with respect, that may not be wise." "Do it." As the message was sent, Turok returned to the viewport. Earth rotated slowly below, serene, untouched. He imagined the billions who lived there, breathing, building, waiting. What kind of species turns its home into a trap and still calls it sacred? He closed his eyes briefly and felt an unfamiliar emotion settle in. Not anger, not even shame. It was recognition. Far below, deep in Earth's shadow, Admiral Lyra Kane watched his crippled fleet drift. Around her, the command deck was silent except for the low hum of tactical readouts. One of her lieutenants spoke softly. "They're pulling back, Admiral. Should we finish them?" Kane's reply was quiet but absolute. "No. Let them crawl home. Fear spreads faster than fire." The lieutenant nodded, though uneasily. "You think they'll come again?" "They will," she said. "Empires always do. But next time, they'll come knowing what we are." Her gaze fixed on the holographic outline of the Dominion sector, dozens of systems, rich and sprawling. "They thought we were cornered animals," she said. "Now they know we were studying the hunters." For a long moment, she said nothing more. The bridge lights dimmed, revealing the reflection of her face in the glass, tired, resolute, and utterly calm. "Transmit the message," she ordered at last. "One phrase only: humanity remains operational." Across the void, that message reached Turok's surviving ships, a single line pulsing in defiance. He read it once, twice, and felt the weight of centuries pressing down on him. Humanity had not just survived the Dominion. They had prepared for them. He looked again toward the distant blue world. "You wanted surrender," he whispered, "and found something older." The words lingered as the stars burned quietly around him, and for the first time in his long command, Admiral Turok Ven feared not defeat, but what humanity might become once victory was no longer enough. The Dominion Council gathered in its grand chamber beneath the crystalline spires of Xyther Prime, a world untouched by war for centuries. Its senators glittered in ceremonial armor, their voices sharp with disbelief. Admiral Turok Ven stood before them, stripped of insignia, a soldier among politicians. The holoscreens behind him played silent footage of his defeat, Dominion ships burning in soul space, human vessels moving with eerie precision. "Propaganda," one counselor hissed. "Fabrications meant to humiliate us." Turok's voice, raw and weary, cut through the murmurs. "You mistake humiliation for warning. Humanity was not defending. They were demonstrating." The chamber erupted in laughter, the sound cold and metallic. Another counselor leaned forward, his crest gleaming. "You claim one primitive world could outthink an empire that spans 1,000 systems." Turok did not flinch. "They didn't outthink us. They understood us. They let us believe we were gods until it no longer amused them." The High Minister rose, his tone measured but poisonous. "Admiral, fear has corroded your reason. Your failure does not rewrite our truth." Turok stepped closer, eyes burning with conviction. "You think this was failure? They invited us in. Every destroyed colony, every lost skirmish, it was bait. They've been mapping us through every engagement. They know our tactics, our technology, our hierarchy. They learned what we are. The silence that followed was heavy, almost reverent. For the first time, the arrogance in the room wavered. Turok pressed on, softer now. We fought them backward because they fought among themselves. But their wars taught them what unity costs. They've built strength from catastrophe. If you continue this war, you won't just lose ships. You'll lose the illusion that you ever controlled this galaxy. The High Minister's expression hardened. Enough. His tone carried the authority of centuries. You are relieved of command. We will assemble the Grand Fleet. Humanity will be purged before their contagion spreads. Turok bowed his head, not in obedience but resignation. Then the purge will begin with you. Guards moved to escort him out, but none missed the tremor that rippled through the council floor, doubt, faint but spreading. Hours later, Turok stood in the observation dome of his transport, watching the planet's golden horizon fade behind him. His command was gone, his warnings dismissed. Yet beneath the bitterness lay something else, grim respect. Humanity had forced him to see the flaw in his own empire, not its power, but its certainty. Far away, beyond the reach of the Dominion's arrogance, Admiral Ira Kane studied the latest sensor data from deep space. Dozens of wormhole anomalies shimmered along the border regions. "They're massing fleets," said her intelligence officer. "We knew they wouldn't listen." Kane's gaze didn't waver. "Good. That makes it simpler." She stood before the massive operations display, a holographic map of Dominion-controlled space, now webbed with human infiltration points. Every colony, every relay, every supply chain had been quietly mirrored by the Terran Defense Network. Years of preparation had turned humanity's weakness into a weapon. "Activate Project Duskfall," she said. A murmur spread through the command deck. The officer hesitated. "That will expose our wormhole lattice. Once we move, there's no going back." Kane's eyes were steady. "We crossed that line when they reached Earth." With a single command, space itself bent. Across light years, human fleets emerged like reflections tearing through glass, autonomous vessels, unmanned carriers, and stealth dreadnoughts deploying in perfect silence. To the Dominion, it would appear instantaneous, 1,000 fronts opening at once. Kane watched the data streams cascade, her voice low. "No speeches. No broadcasts. Let them learn in silence." Her adjutant, a young strategist, spoke softly. "You don't want them to surrender. I want them to understand. Surrender would mean they still think they have a choice." In the far reaches of the Dominion frontier, alarms blared across stations unaccustomed to war. Patrol fleets vanished without a trace. Communications blacked out as human drones hijacked relay networks, replacing propaganda feeds with one haunting message: "We are awake." Back on Xyther Prime, the Council's panic arrived too late. Reports poured in, entire armadas gone, outposts silenced, supply lines erased from existence. The High Minister demanded explanations, but none came. Turok, confined to quarters, received the chaos through a secure channel. He watched as the empire he'd served all his life unraveled under the weight of its own certainty. The irony did not escape him. Humanity hadn't just beaten them, they had taught the Dominion to see its reflection and recoil. Turok recorded a message, his voice steady but quiet. "To whoever listens, we believe humanity sought survival. We were wrong. They seek equilibrium. And when the scales tilt, they don't restore balance, they erase the cause." He ended the transmission and turned toward the viewport. Far beyond, stars flared and died in the darkness as duskfall began. On Earth, Admiral Kane stood alone in the war room, eyes on the growing cascade of red markers across Dominion space. "They'll call us monsters," she murmured. Her aide replied, "They already do." Kane's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Then it's time the monsters earned the name." The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the planet's defense grid expanding outward, forming the beginnings of something vast and unstoppable. Humanity had no intention of ruling, but would never kneel again. And as the stars trembled under the weight of their awakening, both Kane and Turok understood the same truth in different languages. The war was no longer about territory. It was about the kind of species that survives when surrender is no longer possible. The war ended without ceremony. No parades, no declarations, no desperate transmissions gasping for mercy. The Dominions simply stopped answering. One by one, their worlds fell silent, communications severed, fleets erased, command nodes dismantled without so much as a human whisper. In the cold expanse of space, absence became the loudest sound imaginable. Admiral Lyra Kane stood on the bridge of the Resolute Dawn, her eyes tracing the slow, dying pulse of the Dominion's core systems on the holomap. Each fading signal marked the end of an empire that had once believed itself eternal. Around her, the crew worked with quiet precision. No one cheered. No one smiled. The weight of victory was too heavy for celebration. Dominion command frequencies are inactive, reported her comms officer. Their capital has gone dark. Kane nodded, her voice low. Then it's done. But it wasn't relief she felt. It was something colder, a hollow certainty that what humanity had unleashed could never be reversed. For years, she had trained herself to think like an enemy, to anticipate their logic and their fear. But as she watched the map of conquered space glow red with silence, she wondered if humanity had simply become what it despised. In the remnants of Dominion space, aboard a crippled dreadnought orbiting a dying star, Turok Ven stirred from the edge of unconsciousness. His once glorious vessel was now a tomb of twisted metal and flickering lights. He had survived the collapse not out of luck, but because the humans had allowed it. The mercy felt crueler than death. He crawled toward the emergency console, pain flaring through every limb, and found a message waiting. It bore no encryption, no code, just human words written in plain language. Admiral Turok Ven, you are not forgotten. Await retrieval. LK. He closed his eyes. So this was how they ended empires, not through annihilation, but through inclusion. They would not destroy the enemy. They would absorb it, rewrite it, make it serve. Hours later, a Terran vessel arrived, sleek, silent, its hull matte black against the dying light. A boarding team in silver-gray armor entered the shattered command deck, weapons holstered. The lead officer approached him and spoke in fluent Zytherian. Admiral Turok Ven, by order of the United Terran Command, you are to be transported to Earth for debriefing and assignment. Assignment? His voice was cracked, barely a whisper. You mean imprisonment? The officer's visor tilted slightly. Admiral Kane does not imprison. She repurposes. When Turok stepped onto the Terran ship, he expected mockery, interrogation, perhaps even execution. What greeted him was worse, quiet professionalism. Humans moved through the corridors like machines of flesh and will, their expressions distant yet focused. He saw no hatred in their eyes, only purpose. Admiral Kane awaited him in the observation chamber, where Earth shimmered below, in perfect serenity. She stood with her hands clasped behind her back, posture rigid but calm. Turok studied her face, neither youthful nor aged, merely timeless, carved from discipline. So, he rasped, this is the homeworld I was meant to burn. She turned to face him. And now the world you'll help rebuild. He laughed bitterly. You believe I'll serve the ones who erased my people. I believe you'll understand why we couldn't do otherwise. She gestured toward the window. Look, that planet doesn't forget. Every scar, every ruin, every mistake, it carries all of them. That's why we survive. We remember what it costs to be gods. He stared at her, uncertain whether it was arrogance or wisdom he heard. You've won, Admiral. Why keep me alive? Because victory without witness is wasted, she said simply. You'll help govern the reconstruction of what remains of your dominion. You'll speak for them in our council. That's your penance and your privilege. Turok felt the words strike deeper than any weapon. You offer mercy as control. No, Kane said softly. Control is mercy. For a long moment, neither spoke. The hum of the ship's engines filled the silence like a heartbeat. Outside, Earth's blue curve glowed brighter, indifferent to the moral fractures above it. Turok finally said, You've become the thing we feared. Kane met his gaze without hesitation. Then fear kept you alive long enough to see the alternative. He turned back toward the stars. And what is that alternative? A galaxy that doesn't make the same mistake twice. When they descended into Earth's orbit, Turok caught glimpses of cities reborn, shimmering domes where ruins once stood, oceans glittering with defense lattices that pulsed like veins of light. Yet beneath the beauty, there was something unsettling. Humanity had not built peace. They had built readiness. Every structure, every system, carried the quiet paranoia of a species that refused vulnerability. In the weeks that followed, Turok stood before the new Galactic Assembly, the first meeting between victors and survivors. The human emblem, a stylized flame encased in a circle, hung above them all. Kane presided from the center, her voice clear and unyielding. The war is over. The Dominion no longer exists as an empire but as a memory. We will not occupy. We will integrate. Those who surrender will rebuild under shared governance. Those who resist will face extinction by irrelevance. Turok watched her speak with something close to awe. Humanity's authority wasn't forged through conquest. It was enforced through inevitability. They didn't need fear, they had truth. And truth, he realized, was far more dangerous than power. After the session, he approached Cain privately. "Your people will rule this galaxy," he said, "but you'll never rest." Her answer was quiet. "Rest breeds arrogance. We've seen where that ends." He studied her in silence, then nodded once. Perhaps this galaxy deserves its new architects. Cain turned toward the viewing glass, her reflection merging with the stars. "We're not architects, Admiral. Just survivors who learned too much." Outside, the void stretched endlessly, dotted with the ghosts of fallen empires and the fragile light of newborn ones. For the first time in history, there was no war, only the hum of rebuilding, and the uneasy peace that follows irreversible change. Turok broke the silence. "And when someone challenges you again?" Cain's answer came, without pause. "Then we'll remind them what happens when humanity refuses to surrender." Her words hung in the air like prophecy. The stars beyond Earth shimmered faintly, as though listening. Somewhere out there, perhaps, another empire was watching, calculating, underestimating. Humanity would be waiting, quiet, patient, inevitable. As the resolute Dawn rose back into orbit, Admiral Lyra, Cain allowed herself a single breath of stillness. She thought of all the lives lost, all the lines crossed, all the ghosts that now whispered beneath her victory. She did not pray. She simply whispered to the void, "Never again," knowing the universe would never believe her. The ship turned toward the stars, engines burning white against the dark, carrying with it the promise and the curse of a species reborn. And somewhere deep in that silence, the real war, the one within humanity itself, was only just beginning.